What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my refined review and builds guide for Legendary Seliph, Freyja and Spring Est. Freyja and Legendary Seliph also have a remix, and let's talk about Legendary Seliph because, good god, he has got an amazing upgrade. So Virtuous Tearfang did give him +3 resistance, and now with the Weapon Refine, he's able to get -11 attack and defense debuff on the foe in the combat, and also get true damage based on 15% of his attack stat. Not only that, he has got Null Counter Disrupt built in, so he's not going to be stopped by healers like Duels and Fallen Maria, and he can heal up 8 HP per hit in the combat. With his Weapon Refine, he's able to get 80% damage reduction against mages and staff units, which is quite a lot, and then 40% damage reduction against all of the other weapon types. This does exclude AoE damage, so AoE specials are going to be one of the weaknesses of Legendary Seliph. And then finally, he has got his trademark Miracle, but this only works in the enemy phase if his HP is at or above 50, and this is only once per turn. So unlike Brave Seliph, he cannot really loop his Miracle, so this Miracle does require his HP to be at or above 50%, so it's kind of like Ymir's Ever-Living Domain, but it's a bit better. So if an enemy can pierce through his damage reduction and just make him fall below 50% HP, then his Miracle is not going to be active. So that's something that you have to watch out for. This Weapon Refine gives him a lot of things that he needed, like damage reduction and Miracle, but his remix gives him even more stuff to make him even better as a unit. So he gets a remix to his Holy War's End, and now he can debuff the enemy for -5 attack and defense debuff in the combat, and this does stack with his weapon, so he can debuff opponent's attack and defense by -16, which is nothing to scoff at. And then he gets guaranteed follow-up attack and follow-up negation, and finally enemy phase brave effect, which is definitely the thing that makes him so good with his Weapon Refine. Guaranteed follow-up attack and follow-up negation are good effects, don't get me wrong, but there are just so many null follow-up units that a lot of times these effects are not going to be active. So having the brave effect in the enemy phase is extremely powerful with his attack stat and the fact that he can debuff the opponent's defense and attack by so much, and he's got amazing damage reduction, and his survivability becomes much better now, and he can also kill things a lot easily because of the defense debuff that he can get. And of course the healing is going to be helping him to stay above that HP threshold of Miracle, and in case any kind of enemy can, just hit him really hard, then the Miracle does come as a failsafe in case you have to take on some kind of insane enemy. And overall he's going to be functioning as like the best enemy phase Cavalier that we have in the game, because there's no other Cavalier who can come close to the defensive prowess of Legendary Seliph. And I've tested him quite a lot after his Weapon Refine, and he's able to take on many of the meta threats pretty easily. So having Null Counter Disrupt really makes him an amazing unit to be used against Cav lines that usually do have duo Elise or just have the sweep effects. So Null Counter Disrupt does mean that he's going to be a pretty nice counter pick against those kinds of teams. Of course, against stuff like Rattlecatter teams, he's going to be taking a lot of damage, more than he can heal up many times, but still he can function as a pretty amazing tank for a Cavalier. And for the in-game content, he can many times solo the Abyssal maps now after this Weapon Refine, and even if he's going to be facing damage reduction piercing, which is common, he's still going to be able to survive because of the attack debuff that he can do on the enemy and the Miracle that he has got. And even at low investment like no merges and +1 merge, he's going to be performing pretty well with the damage reduction and tanking a lot of things that he has no right of tanking. And this is absolutely a journey from zero to hero for Legendary Seliph in my opinion, because he was one of the worst legendary units before this Weapon Refine and remix, and now he has become a much better Earth legendary unit. I wouldn't say that he's like the best Earth legendary or anything like that, even though I'm a big Seliph fan, but he's so much better now. And even if you're not a competitive player and you're not going to be using him in Arena or Aether Raids, you can still get a lot of mileage out of him, like in in-game content in the Abyssal maps, where he's going to be doing a fantastic job against the in-game opponents, which are not even going to be optimized to take him out. In the competitive content, of course, you're going to be facing opponents who can pierce through the damage reduction and do all of those things, and many times he's going to be getting overwhelmed, especially if you don't support him well. And there are just so many supports that you can give to him, like bonus doubler, the grand strategy, or even the special charges from Na that can allow you to have a much stronger special. So all of those things can make him a lot better, and honestly this Weapon Refine and remix makes him as the best enemy phase Cavalier in my opinion, and also the winner of this batch that we have got in August. So if you're going to be building him up, there's really not much to change as he does get Distant Ferocity as a slot A skill. I guess he can change the slot A skill to Attack Smoke just so that he can be a bit more tanky. And he could run Bonfire, but in my opinion a low cooldown special like Glimmer is going to be a lot better because he can actually trigger that on his Brave hit. So Attack Defense Catch is going to be a pretty good Sacred Seal that he can run, or he can even run Attack Resistance solo or Attack Resistance Catch. All of those are going to be the options. There's not really much to change on his slot A and slot B because he does want Distant Counter, especially with Null Counter Disrupt in his weapon and being able to take on the mages so easily with that 80% damage reduction. Legendary Seliph can also be used in Aether Raids offense as a tank, and especially against cav lines, he can be a good counter pick, especially with Hardy Bearing as a tech option. Now Hardy Bearing is going to be there for Legendary Veronica because often cav lines are going to be having Legendary Veronicas, and even though Legendary Seliph can easily survive Legendary Veronica, it's the fact that Legendary Veronica leaves him at very low HP to the point where he could be getting taken out by some other threat on the team. Hardy Bearing disables Legendary Veronica's Dive Bomb effect and doesn't really affect Seliph because he no longer has the enemy phase Desperation and he does have the Brave attacks now. So Hardy Bearing is actually a pretty nice tech option that he can run. Otherwise, you can just run Attack Res Catch as the Sacred Seal if you're just going to be tanking usually. For his slots, you can run Panic Smoke 4, which can really help you, and on a budget, I guess you can also run Pulse Smoke, which we did get in the Limited Ephemerate manuals and Groom Pent. So that is also a good slotsy skill to have. And I really like Glimmer as a 2 cooldown special on Seliph because he can trigger that on his Brave hit. And if you do provide him with the special charges status from Na or Fallen Ninian, then you can even run Ignis as a higher cooldown special, which he can trigger on his Brave hit, which is going to be doing quite a lot of damage. But usually I've found that against even highly invested cav lines, he's going to be able to kill most of the things without really requiring a special. But of course against the bulkier threats, your special is going to be coming into the play. If you're going to be using him in the light season, then Goto is a pretty good ally to use with Seliph because he covers one of his weaknesses, which is against the AoE specials, and Goto does give the damage reduction against AoE specials, which is perfect, and he also gives you extra resistance, which is even better. And if you're at like low investment, then of course you should be providing him with some kind of good support so that he can tank a bit better. He can only be used in Earth Season in Aether Raids offense, but still he can make for a pretty good tank, and if nothing else, then as a pretty good counter pick against cav lines. And if you're going to be investing heavily into him, then you can definitely try and run him with Joint Drive Attack and run something like Attack Res Catch as a Sacred Seal. And then finally, if you're going to be using him in Arena, then he can function as a much better Legendary unit now because of his Weapon Refine and Remix. And there, I think that Alarm Attack Defense is going to be helping you quite a lot because not only it gives you the visible buffs, but it also gives you extra attack and defense in the combat, and it also provides you with Counter 1 status. Now even though Seliph is mainly going to be useful in the enemy phase with his effects, I think having Canto 1 is still pretty amazing just for the utility in something like Arena where you are not allowed to use any kind of assist like reposition, drawback and such. So there I think having the utility and the positioning of Canto 1 is going to be pretty helpful. Freyja is a mythic unit who needs a lot of things, and she definitely gets some of the things from her Refine and Remix that does make her a much better mythic unit. So Nightmare Horn did give her +3 speed and also had Distant Counter built in, along with speed-based damage reduction up to 40%. And now with the new Weapon Refine, she can get +8 to all of these stats in the combat, and she also has the new Cavalry Beast transformation effect that we did see in Arcane Nihility. So it provides her with even more damage reduction and can also provide her with attack and defense debuff on the enemy. And the attack debuffs can especially be really helpful if you're trying to run Gale Force with Freyja because she only has Heavy Blade as the special charging option. Cavaliers have no access to Flashing Blades, so the attack debuff can help you. And then she has got Near Trace built in, along with special cooldown count -1, which is extremely good. Honestly, I was not expecting special cooldown -1 on a Refine, and getting that does make Gale Force as a 4 cooldown special and makes something like Moonbow a 1-turn special. And finally, she gets Null Follow-Up in her Weapon Refine, which was kinda expected because Newer Leith and Newer Sulky also got that in their Weapon Refines. So having the full Null Follow-Up is absolutely amazing, along with the Near Trace effect, which is going to be helpful for the mobility as a Cavalier. And because she's got Binding Necklace Plus in her slot B, having Near Trace in her weapon is a lot better. And speaking of Binding Necklace, its remix does remove the condition to transform, which is really amazing with the new effect now. And it does have Phantom Speed 1.5 built in, and the half tempo effect, which is also Null Guard. So having the half tempo effect does make it a lot easier for her to trigger the specials, and then she can get +3 to all of her stats in the combat, and also inflict -3 to all of the stats of the foe in the combat. And finally, she does have the Binding Necklace effect, which is the foe buff stealer. So she's gonna be really thriving against the units who have any kind of visible buffs, and is basically gonna be stealing their buffs. So all of these things do make Freyja a much better light mythic. As someone who has used Freyja a lot in Gale Force teams and also for cleanup, I think this Weapon Refine and Remix is decent, and it's not the worst thing ever, and it does make her a bit better, but still, it doesn't completely save her, because there's still gonna be competition from Nerthus when it comes to Gale Force and cleanup. Honestly, she needed something to the degree of Legendary Seliph in my opinion. This is decent, but obviously not up to the mark. So I don't think Freyja really incentivizes you to use her a lot unless it's her bonus season, or if you're a big Freyja fan and if you've already merged her up, because there are just better light mythics that can tank, support, Gale Force, and clean up much better than Freyja. But at least after this Refine and Remix, Freyja is able to do a little bit of everything. She's able to clean up much better, she's able to Gale Force much better, and also tank things a lot better with the extra stats and the Phantom Speed 1.5. It's just that she's not able to provide any kind of support, which was the thing that she was lacking before. And if you're going to be building her up after this upgrade, then you can still use her with the budget skill with attack speed solo that she comes with, and Speed Smoke 4 being her remix skill. So this can allow her to have another layer of damage reduction, which is much needed because Freyja doesn't really have the raw bulk of many of the units, so having more damage reduction stacking is definitely really helpful. And you can definitely replace attack speed solo with attack speed catch, as we do have it available in the divine codes, and this is a much better slotty skill without the proximity condition, and you can also run it as a secret seal because it is going to be available in the Tempest trial, so that can be helpful. And at least now she doesn't really have to be alone, and Binding Necklace does have a more lenient condition, so that is much better. And at max investment, you can definitely give her attack speed clash 4 so that she can have the attack and speed debuff neutralization. Clash effect does have good synergy with the new Beast Cavalier transformation condition that we have got, and if you're trying to use her in a Gale Force team, then I think you can provide her with some support of Veluria, Asker, or Garrick, so that she pretty much has a 2 cooldown Gale Force or even 1 cooldown Gale Force. So because of the half tempo effect of her Binding Necklace, at least she wouldn't have to run Heavy Blade if you bring her cooldown down, if it makes sense, and that is gonna be one of the ways of using her for Gale Force, because meeting the Heavy Blade checks, especially as a low investment Freyja, is gonna be really annoying in the current metagame, and I really dislike how we do not have Flashing Blade Sacred Seal available for the Cavaliers, because it would have been so much better for her. Unlike Nerthus, she doesn't really have any kind of special charges, so it is going to be a bit hard without support to completely Gale Force off of Freyja. And if you cannot run any kind of support, then Heavy Blade Sacred Seal is of course going to be the option. And she can also be used as a Wings of Mercy Gale Force unit if she's one of your core mythic units, and if you don't really want to use her as an initiator. So with the first build, she could be used as an initiator or a secondary initiator. But with the second build, she can basically jump in after your initiator is in the Wings of Mercy range, and she can continue to Gale Force. She's going to be losing her half tempo effect, unfortunately, if you run Wings of Mercy. But such is life if you're going to be using her as a Wings of Mercy unit. So you could still do it because at least Gale Force is a 4 cooldown special now, and she's got the Near Trace effect built in her Refine, which can definitely be helpful for trapping many of the threats and for collecting the pots. Finally, at max investment, you can try and use her as a god goat in a sense, because she's got damage reduction and null follow-up. So she can function as a tank because she does have distant counter in her weapon, and you can stack up damage reduction with her weapon and Speed Smoke 4, and healing is going to be necessary, so you can run Soul as your special, and if you provide a good support like Legendary Male Robin, Legendary Eliwood, or Na, then you can definitely try and tank her against many of the teams. Attack speed Unity is actually pretty good with Legendary Male Robin for the Unity stacking, and she's going to be extremely fast. And because she does have so much speed, she's going to be attracting a lot of Bright Shrine debuffs, so that's why attack speed Unity does help. And it does help with the distant counter in her weapon, so her open slotty can be utilized well. You still have to watch out for any kind of damage reduction piercing because Freyja is completely dependent on her speed-based damage reduction to tank. So if that gets pierced, then she's going to be taking a lot of damage. And because she doesn't really have enough HP as a mythic unit, it sometimes can be fatal. Spring Est is a seasonal blue mage flyer, and before this weapon refine, Eagle's Egg did give her Spectrum debuff neutralization and +3 attack. And now with the Weapon Refine, she's able to get +9 to all of her stats, and also the guaranteed follow-up attack, which is really helpful because Est is not really the fastest unit by the modern standards, so this guaranteed follow-up attack can help her. And then she can get Flat Canto 1, which frees up her slot B skill from running a Fortress skill, and the Flat Canto 1 is a lot better than the Fortress because this can actually give her the Canto even after teleporting. So if she runs something like Attack Speed Oath 4, she can still teleport, which is really good. And then with this Weapon Refine, she's able to get the Fire Sweep effect if the foe has a penalty active on them. And it's pretty easy to have a penalty active when at start of turn she can inflict -6 defense and resistance debuff and the exposure status on the nearest foes within 5 spaces and the foes within 2 spaces of those foes. So with the Fire Sweep effect, she's not going to be getting counter-attacked, and if the enemy is hit by the exposure status, then any of your allies can do 10 true damage to them per hit, which is really good and can make her as a pretty nice supportive unit who can also nuke a bit with her Weapon Refine. So she's not exactly going to be some kind of insane supportive unit or insane nuke like the T-Time Lysithea that we have got, but at least she's going to be decent enough as a hybrid, and I really enjoy Weapon Refines like these on units who are going to be getting insane competition, so at least they can stand out a bit because of the support that they can provide. Of course, like many of the mage flyers, she's not going to be having any kind of way of piercing through the damage reduction of the enemies, which can be an unfortunate thing for her nuking, but still she's going to be able to provide support with her debuffs and basically function as a budget duo Thor because of providing the exposure status on the enemies, and this can really prove to be helpful with the right units, and she can function in a Brattle Catcher team and something like Aether Raids defense where exposure can be really helpful with the brave hits. If you're going to be running her on a budget, then you can simply run her with Fury 4 that she comes with, even though it doesn't have the best synergy with the HP threshold of her Weapon Refine. Still, it's a budget option, and if you're just using her occasionally in like limited battles or arena assault, then mostly you're going to be using her for the debuffs that she can provide. So you can just run even more supportive skills like Attack Speed Link with Reposition and run Blade Session on her, because ideally she should not be facing any kind of counter attacks because of the conditional Fire Sweep effect built in her weapon. So Blade Session does work out as a player phase option, and if you're going to be investing a bit more into her, then you can definitely run Attack Speed Catch 4 and Blade Session. Now unfortunately, there are not too many skills that could be run on a ranged flyer for their slot B, and especially a ranged flyer that has got a Fire Sweep effect. So you can run Seal Resistance, I suppose, but Aerobatics is going to be a bit more of a budget option that you can run from Brattle Juno from the Divine Codes, and at least it can provide you the teleportation. And like I said, she could be used in a Catria Ball, so she could be run in either Dark Season or the Anima Season. But in the Anima Season, there's going to be no Goto that she would have to face, who can just cancel her Fire Sweep effect and still just kill her. So you can use her in an Anima team with Freyja and a Catria Ball, and she can provide the exposure status debuff, which is going to be really helpful with a Brattle Catcher team because you get 10 true damage per hit on an enemy that is affected by the exposure status. So with the Brattle Catcher team, that is going to be working out really well, and Wings of Mercy is also another slot B skill that you can run on Spring Est. There are not too many options, especially on budget, but yeah, these are basically the ones. And if you're going to be heavily investing into her, then in future, whenever we get Attack Speed Snack 4, then that is also going to be a pretty good option for her because she can debuff the opponent's all stats and also provide the Sabotage status with the Snack 4 skill. And you can also run Guidance or Soaring Guidance as a supportive skill for her slot C. And another skill which is not out yet but she would love is Chill Attack Speed 3. So she already debuffs opponents' defense and resistance with her weapon, and with Chill Attack Speed 3 she could debuff all of these stats, and if she runs Panic Smoke herself, then she can definitely make use of the foe penalty doubler and do a lot of things and nuke much better. So that is also an option, and because of the debuffs that she can do, Attack Speed Catch is always going to be a pretty nice option for her. There are still more refines left from this batch, and I'll be covering all of them in my next video. So hope you all did enjoy this video. Make sure to share this with your friends if they are trying to build up any of these units. And if you did enjoy, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FE videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I wish YouTube sub boxes were about as functional as Legendary Seliph's Weapon Refine. So with that, still see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.